Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of You Can't Come Over, but You Can Come In. One of our most anticipated guests is with me today, Lori McKenna.
Hi everybody.
Excited that you're on here. There are some huge Lori McKenna fans that watch this every week. And from the first one of these I did, people asked, "Can you get Lori McKenna? Can you get Lori McKenna?" And so we've got her today.
That's amazing. What nice fans you have.
Well, they're your fans too. Um, and they love, this has turned into sort of somebody said it's like they're getting to eavesdrop on a conversation between two singer-songwriters. And I, I always think nobody is going to like what I like. And the first time that kind of happened was Mary Chapin Carpenter, who we actually talked about you in that one. And I was so into just talking to Mary Chapin that it was like 40 minutes before a song was played. So I thought everybody's going to hate this, and everybody commented on how much they loved that. So
Oh, that's so great. I mean, it's like you probably forget you're recording sometimes and doing this live. It's like that's what happens to us sometimes. That's what happens to me during a show sometimes between songs. Like I'll look at my guitar player and he'll be like, okay, wrap up the story.
the stories are great. I was talking to somebody this morning that was talking about how their favorite thing as a fan is the in-between song banter.
Yeah.
And I like that too. Like when I saw Adele, that was the thing that really struck me, was probably 60% of her show was her talking, so much so that I started to notice that the band, it changed it. I saw her a couple times, but I noticed the second time, like, oh, she doesn't say the same thing every night, because she would have to cue the band by saying, and now we're going to sing Rumor Has It.
Right.
They would,
Right.
she was just out there in this great sequin dress, walking around, talking, um, and just going off on tangents. But I love.
But that's amazing though, because then you see her personality and she seems like she has such a awesome personality. I've never seen her live. That must have been great.
It was kind of life changing. And yeah, and I'll be the first to admit, I was not, I mean, I always appreciated Adele, but I wasn't this big Adele fan, probably because the whole world was. And I always like to be, you know,
Yeah.
overrated. I never thought she was overrated, but I just wasn't somebody I would have seen in concert. And my manager actually said, "You have to see Adele." And she was playing at the Staples Center, I want to say 7 nights in a row or something.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and so she said, "Go to the concert. You don't have to stay the whole time. Just stay for 4 songs." And I went, and before I knew it, I was screaming for one more song in the encore. Like, it was just
Oh,
really a riveting sort of performance, and kind of helped me as a singer songwriter just embrace the way I want to entertain, because Adele
mhm.
even said something about, somebody in the press had said she talked too much. She said, "It's my show. I'll talk as much as I want."
Good for her.
Crazy. So, on that subject of live music, do you remember your first concert?
My first concert was U2 at the Boston Garden. And literally, strangely enough, I was in the last row, like center stage, the last row, like back up to the cement of the building.
Oh,
And it was a school night, and then I couldn't go to school the next day. And it kind of like it was a bad thing, because then the police came through and my father wouldn't let me go to the concert because I had missed a day of school the last time I pulled going to a concert on a school night. So I wasn't allowed to go to, which, I was a huge Police fan. I was a huge U2 fan too, but that was my first concert.
when you said the police came through, I thought you meant literally the police.
And like Sting, the whole thing, Stuart Copeland, the whole band.
You got arrested? I mean, that's where my mind went to. So you would have probably been a teenager at that point.
Yeah, I
You're,
think I was maybe in eighth grade or something.
so a young teenager.
I feel like I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I was in eighth or ninth grade. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I remember my mom. The first concert I ever went to was Ronnie Millsap with my parents, really young. But then I got a little bit older and I wanted to go to different kinds of concerts. And I remember I couldn't because one of my cousins had gone to a Bon Jovi concert. And gotten away from her mom and like, was just,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, doing what teenagers do. And so it sort of soured the waters. I didn't get to go to a concert by myself for a long time. I remember my dad taking me and my best friend to New Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was one of many dads there. It wasn't just me, but
Oh, I bet. Yeah, there was gonna be none of that in my family. I'm the youngest of six, so I had a little bit like you with your family. It's like if something happened to somebody else, it was not gonna be allowed to happen to me. So, but there was no way my dad was gonna like bring me to a concert. I don't think at that, at that time. And I don't know why I never went to anything like with my older siblings even until then. It was like not even, I can't even think of a small show, you know what I mean, that I went to before then. Um, which is funny because we were such a music family. We were so into listening to records and playing music together. It's funny that I never was exposed to it before that.
So when you went to that U2 concert, did you the next day when you were home from school, did you think, man, I want to do that? Or were you already feeling that?
No, I mean, I just didn't think, I just thought I loved music. I didn't even think that I would like have a job like working in the music business, even though I love music so much. I just have, none of that clicked for me. I wrote songs since I was little,
Mhm.
like probably around that, or younger than that even, probably I started writing songs just for myself because two of my brothers are songwriters, but I never, none of it clicked for me myself until I was like in my late 20s. It's so weird. Like I think it's my voice, to be honest. Like I think I knew I had this weird voice and it didn't sound like everybody else's voices that I was growing up listening to. So, because we listened to like Carole King and, you know what I mean? And Joni Mitchell and these, these really strong, beautiful voices, Carly Simon. And I knew I didn't sound like any of those people. And I just always had, and even my siblings have pretty voices, like,
Mhm.
and my voice, you either like it or you don't. And I think for a long time I didn't, I just didn't like it, so I never imagined.
Well, that's probably a really good thing. I mean, myself and everybody listening does like your voice, so that's a good thing for you to know. But, I think that sometimes if singers love their own voice, I can tell it, like they're a vain singer. Like
Oh, that's funny.
they start to do tricks that they love to hear themselves do versus just telling a story
Yeah.
with their voice, which I think is what you do so well. And what singers that I have loved historically do, they're not in love with their own voice so much.
That's so funny. Can I swear on this?
Yes. You can say anything you want.
You've been here to write songs with me and people come up to write songs and we write in the songs all day in the basement, go out to dinner, sometimes. And Matresa Berg, the first time she was here, my daughter Megan came out to dinner with us that night, and we were sitting around talking, and I was saying how Megan, I don't even remember how old she was. It was a few years ago, and I was saying how Megan can sing really well, but she doesn't like her voice. Like she hates to sing in front of people because she doesn't like her voice. And I'm like, I don't know what it is. I don't know how to like convince her that she has such a pretty voice and she should sing. And Megan said, no, my voice is terrible. And Matresa said, it's good that you don't like your voice, Megan, because if you did, that would make you an asshole.
I mean, I kind of agree with Matresa. There are singers. I mean, one of my favorite singers of all time is Karen Carpenter.
Yes.
She didn't love her voice. Like you can
You
tell
did?
that when she sings. I mean,
Oh, wow.
I think there's a difference in knowing, like, I'm a good singer and being in love with your voice.
Yeah. Now that we're talking about this, I think I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
another great singer who's not in love with their voice is Trisha Yearwood. I never feel like Trisha's showing me that she's a singer. She's just telling this story with her instrument and her heart.
With her perfect voice. I mean, she has one of the most stunning voices
Yes.
we know. And that's so interesting. Yeah. And she always talks about the song and the songwriters. And Yeah, she just uses it as this gorgeous vehicle to get the song out in a way. I think for me it helped me finally, like I figured out and I do sometimes, I'm not gonna like lie and pretend I don't wish I had a bigger range sometimes, especially in writing songs for other people. It would make, that part of what we do a little easier. But and I don't love being in the studio for listening to my voice, too long, because I wish I could do things better. But I will say that I did learn as I got older that all my deficiencies are really what formed my style. And I think I wouldn't sound like me if everything was easier for, if I wouldn't have worked so hard on my craft maybe, or other things, if just naturally I was gifted the way some people are, or it seems as if they are.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of my favorite male singers in the modern age actually has cut some of your songs is Tim McGraw.
Mhm.
And Tim doesn't have some great big range.
Mhm.
Just does the most with what he has. And I think if somebody doesn't have as much range, it forces them to use their voice in a different emotional way.
Yeah. I think for that purpose, emotionally speaking, it's benefited me. I mean, Tim has a beautiful tone. I just love his tone.
Mhm.
And you can't really buy tone or learn tone or anything else. Maybe you can buy it nowadays. I don't know. But like, and you can see how he's developed over the years. Like when you listen to his early stuff and how he sings now, you can listen to someone like Tim over the years and realize that they've improved where they started, and they've learned to sit in their voice and things like that. Like I can oversing sometimes. Mary Gauthier is a great example of that, because I watched her like a hawk her whole career, and like she would always get better, and she would always be a better writer, be a better performer, be a better singer, be better at everything. And I always was like amazed at her growth process, and how what she ultimately did was she learned to sit in herself perfectly. And that's when I think people have that breakthrough record or that breakthrough song and all that, when they finally you stop worrying about all the outside stuff maybe, and you just find the song in yourself. And that's you know that's where the flow, I guess, starts for
Now,
us.
I mean, Mary, I know had a huge part of you coming to Nashville, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Where did you first meet Mary?
At an open mic in Milton, Mass. I forget the name of it. I used to remember. It was like a coffee place, like a cafe that had an open mic on Wednesday nights. And you'd go and you'd put your name on the list. And the first time I met her, um my husband and I showed up, and she was the feature. Like they'd have like half the people play a song, and then the feature would come up,
Mhm.
and they'd play for like half an hour. And we both stood out like kind of sore thumbs, because Mary's so Mary, and I was like, everyone else is like 18 and in college, and we're a little bit older than her. Like we're, what I mean, just a couple of years apart in age. And I'm like the one with all the kids, and like showed up. Like, we just found each other like right away. And I always was a couple steps behind her, but she was always willing to like just turn around and be like, come on, come with me, like check out this or what I'm doing. And she was such a good nurturing friend. I mean, the Boston community is pretty nurturing anyway in this environment, or at least my experience of it was. It's not very competitive at all. And she moved to Nashville, and I made a record called Bittertown, and she gave it to Melanie Howard, who was a publisher. And that's how that was my introduction to Nashville, was because of Mary.
I remember that because the publisher I was at the time was above. We were in the same.
Mhm. Building.
I remember hearing Mary, and I was very early in my development as a writer, and then hearing you, and it was just like head and shoulders above so much. And seeing Mary play at the Bluebird, she did a showcase that I think is where she ended up getting her record deal on Lost Highway. And
Mhm.
her songs it was also, you guys were both great examples to me of just telling a story in unvarnished truth and not, because there's so much at that time. um, I felt a lot of pressure to kind of slick things up, and so it was this great little world, and Melanie Howard was always great at finding the real
Yeah.
songwriter. And there were, there were Mark Stephen Jones, who became a very, um, somebody I wrote with a lot. He was there, and it was always the thing you guys all had in common was this realness that just, it's like you say, you can't buy tone. Like, you
Yeah.
also buy that real quality, because you have to find it in yourself. Like you were saying,
Yeah.
your way of looking at the truth is going to be different than mine. It's going to be different than Mark Sanders, who was also around there. I know you and he started writing a lot. um,
Yeah.
but it is about finding that center of truth in yourself, and you guys were so ahead of the curve in doing that.
But I think the reason I was lucky enough to be like that was because I wrote by myself for nobody for so many years. I mean, by that point I was 34, and I started writing songs probably when I was 13 or 12, you know what I mean? And just with no hope of like, I mean, I put out my first record when I was 28. So there was a little bit, but by then, like, I didn't learn to edit. Like, I think if I had started or had known that it was a possibility to do this as young as you did, you know what I mean? I would have been just like that, and sort of just, I think I just came about it this way of having no editor and nobody telling me, nobody critiquing my songs because nobody heard them. And so I think if I was 18 and moved to Nashville, and like so many people do, and just, learned that way, something would have changed probably in the way that I learned to write, that probably wouldn't have benefited me, because I'm not really that great of a commercial writer. I'm not a good, like, you should write a song for this. I'm not that good at that. I do like those exercises, but
Mhm.
I'm more, like, I'm just better at following my heart, as you are too. And I think that's when people, like, and like you and we're better at just, I don't know what's on the agenda today. I don't know what's on the radio this week, but I need to just write this because it's like picking at me if I don't,
But I also think part of why, I mean, this is part of why I like writing with you. And I think why you do have, for someone who's not very good at writing commercial songs, you've had a lot of commercial success, for you to say that. Those are your words, not mine. Um, because I always feel about you that doesn't have to be your way, that you are up for whatever is bubbling up in the room that day.
Yeah.
And that's a gift. I think that's as much of a gift as the person who comes in and is like, we have to write this today. Like, that's a gift.
Well, that's nice to think of it that way. Thank you. But I really do 100% truly believe. Well, first of all, I had never co-written a song until I have a publishing deal. And I think my first co-write ever was Mark D. Sanders upstairs in that office of his. And then you and I were early on too. I feel like, they put us together because we were similar in writing styles. And I remember thinking that you had so much more experience co-writing because I was so new to it still. But I kind of learned from Mark D and Liz Rose too, because I wrote with her early on.
Great
And they
co-writer.
kind of taught me so much, just like, when I went to Nashville originally, coming from the Boston music scene, I had people warn me, like, co-writing is going to mess you up. If you've gone this long, you're 34, if you've gone this long without co-writing a song, like, you have no business trying it now. It's probably going to mess you up. But it was just the opposite. Like, I love co-writing. I love going in the room and seeing, like, what's the best song in the room. And it may not be my idea. It's probably your idea, and it may not, like, it's like, and what hat we wear, like, how we wear, like, some songs we're the therapist, and some songs we're the artist, and some songs we're the cheerleader, or the best friend, and, like, we serve the purpose of the song. I love that. Like, you and I and Barry Dean, for example, could sit down and write 2 songs in a day. And in each of those songs, we're going to wear a different hat, because it's going to be, you know, and I love getting with people that serve the song, and that's when you're in a magical room, even if you don't get a song that gets cut, you know, you're in magic.
Yeah, no, there's no room for ego in it. I remember Rory Burke, who is in the NSAI Hall of Fame, amazing songwriter and even more amazing person. He told me that. I got the chance to write with him early on in co-writing, and he said you just have to be in service of the song. Some
Yeah.
and I'll never forget this. He said sometimes your role is to just keep your co-writer from leaving the room. Like
Wow.
different days, different people are really like channeling whatever that muse is. And you don't ever want your own ego to get in the way of that. You just want to help that come through. And I
Yeah.
did that, or tried to keep that in mind, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I say this all the time, but it's like, I've written songs that I knew, you know, that feeling like, oh, we kind of missed something. I don't know what it was, or it could have been better if it wasn't my favorite song, maybe, but I always learn something. Even if it is, I can sit in this room and live through this right now. Or, you know, yeah, or how to like just we learn something every time. And I just love co-writing. That's why through all this, you know, being able to do this and connect with my friends and co-write this way has been, you know, just a little bit of a godsend in all this, because even though I do write alone sometimes, it for me now, I'm so used to it, it's such a big part of what I love about music, that connection.
Oh, this has been a savior for me. I think
Mhm.
in some ways, with everything in the world, I mean, I've written some by myself in this, but mostly I've co-written, and I feel almost too sad sometimes with everything going on if I get by myself to sink into that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't like to sink into sad, but when it's like world sadness, it's a little harder.
Yeah, sinking to sad right now is you have to be careful. You have to make sure you get a lifeline somewhere.
These I notice for me on the days that I have one of these Zoom co-writes, I've I have a pep in my step.
Yeah.
You know, it just feels good to connect and talk. And so I've gotten us down a kind of a rabbit hole, but I'd love to go back to, you said, you know, you started writing songs when you were 13. I always love to ask, and if you feel comfortable playing it, play it. If not, that's okay. But what's the song that made you want to write songs?
Yeah, so that I mean it's so hard in a way because I feel like I grew up listening to like I always say in my house it was like Jesus and James Taylor, and you know what I mean, like it was like my brother's music. I grew up with, you know, my brother's singer-songwriter music and Neil Young. And I mean, I couldn't play a James Taylor song if my life depended on it ever, you know, because he's so good. But I mean, that guitar part. But I think when I think about that, I think and I think it was like the right after I was in high school. I graduated high school in 87 and Gene and I got married in 88. And that year Tracy Chapman came out. Like that's when I discovered Tracy Chapman, and that was like the first time I heard a voice. There's so many things about her that I love, but that was the first time I heard a voice that wasn't like this really pretty. Do you know what I mean? Like even though her voice is really pretty,
Yeah,
it
I thought it
was unique.
for a long time. Like I thought she was a man.
Yes, I remember the first time I heard that song, and it was like, is that a dude or is that a woman? Like, you know what I mean? Exactly. And then and then the other thing when I think about that song is, I mean, Fast Car I think was the first song I heard. I think possibly it was her first single, but that song, the language in that song, it's such a long song. Like I never like learned it or covered it or anything, but there's so many words in that song because the story just goes and goes and goes and goes. But when you think about that story, it's like exactly what I still write about now. Like you got a fast car, like she's got to get out of her house, and then like she has this dream, like take off with this guy and make this life for themselves, and she ends up sort of in the same boat that she grew up, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh my God, this formed me more, more than anything, you know, was that song. And then when I started singing out, which was years later, like if that song came out in 88, I didn't really start singing out of my house until probably 97 or 96.
Wow.
And when I got the nerve to just like play at the brunch at the bar down the street and things like that, it was like, oh, this white girl sounds like Tracy Chapman. And I got it so much that I think I must have just sort of copied her. I'm just gonna play you a little bit, okay? Because I totally dumb it down. You know me, I dumb everything down. But let's see. You got a fast car. I got a plan to get us out of here. Been working at the convenience store. Managed to save just a little bit of money. We won't have to go too far. Cross the border and into the city. You and I can both get jobs. Finally see what it means to be living. See, my old man's got a problem. You live with the bottle, that's the way it goes. His body's too overworking. His body's too young to look like his. My mama went off and left him. She wanted more life than he could give. I said, somebody's got to take care of him. So I quit school and that's what I did. So sad, right? But remember we were driving in your car. Speed so fast it felt like I was drunk. And city lights lay out before us. And your arm felt nice wrapped around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belonged. I had a feeling I could be someone. It's like the best, right?
So that's, for starters, that was great.
Well, there's so many words, like her language. I love that.
I've never heard of Tracy Chapman influence in what you do until right now. Like that is so obviously something that inspired you. That's amazing.
It really did, and it's funny because I really had to think about, like, because I also loved like an ate up like Suzanne Vega and Sean Colvin, but I didn't sound like Suzanne Vega has such a pure, beautiful voice, and Sean Colvin, who I now know a little bit because I've opened up for her so many times over the years. Like she just is like she doesn't even have a tuner on stage. Like she just, her ear and everything is perfect about what she does. But I think Tracy, it was that rawness in her voice. But then when I looked at it, it was really like her phrasing's kind of crazy. And I think if you brought a song like that to like someone that is gonna like critique phrasing or critique this, like they'd be like, wait, there's way too many words here, your phrasing's kind of, those are the co-writes that I get the most shut down in, when somebody really likes phrasing to be perfect, because I actually like it a little out of whack. I like it when one line doesn't match the other. And I think it may be from listening to so many singer-songwriters, you know, and over the years, and just that song could be read like a conversation.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned you spoke of Mark D. Sanders before, which I need to get him on here. Every time people come up and then they become guests. But I remember, because I got to write with him a lot and I learned a lot from him. Yeah. And I remember he and I were writing a song one time and he said, let's make this feel really left-footed to us. By the time we're finished with it, it won't feel left-footed, but it will make it different, like in a cool way to the listener.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
What he said. He did say left-footed, but the rest of that is me paraphrasing. But I think about that too, and what you're saying about phrasing. A lot of times the songs that, to me, like bust through in a big way, there's something that's that breaks the rule that we listen to, and it becomes generally the favorite part of the song.
Yeah, like that word that you're like, oh my God, like that's such a weird word to hear in a song. Or I mean, Springsteen, I guess, you know, I grew up listening to a lot of that too, and I guess he's so poetic, and there's so many, I mean, it's just you know, unbelievable what he does. But it is that flow of this this language that doesn't seem like it's going to fit into a song, and somehow he makes it. I remember writing with Mark D one time too, and we were debating a line, and I don't remember what the line was, but he said, well, don't go by me because I can make anything phrase. And I do love that about him. And I do kind of get sort of shut down when it's harder for me to just match everything perfectly. And I don't know. I think when I looked back, I think I learned a lot from her.
Mm-hmm.
Or found a lot of grace in what she like, oh, like that's kind of the way my brain thinks. Maybe that's okay,
I mean, you say you learned a lot from Tracy Chapman. A long time ago, a co-writer of mine said people are only as great as their influences. And at the time, I didn't really understand what that means, but now as time has gone on, I understand that more. And there's something about that, because that is where we learn to write songs. Like you said, it was almost like you were copying her vocally. That's where I think that's where it starts, and then you develop into your own thing. But none of us made this up.
Yeah.
We are just, we fall in love with a voice or a certain style of song, and then we start to emulate it and make it our own. But that's a great great influence to have, Tracy Chapman and Bruce Springsteen. Jeez.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there's so many. It's funny, like I didn't grow up listening to Don Williams, but then when someone turned me on to somebody asked me if I was a big fan, and I was like, who's that? And I knew some of the stuff from like hearing it as a kid, but when I looked and like kind of studied what he did, it was like, oh wow, I wish that was more of my blood. And but I think you find, you find the things that you're drawn to. Well, you're just, you find what you need to in the moment, and then you go, like, I didn't realize that in the time that was going to be such a big influence on me.
Yeah.
But it really was.
And speaking of phrasing, Don Williams, there's not a better, I mean, he phrased so, or he's passed, but he phrased
Right.
so amazingly, just effortlessly.
Yeah, and kind of just a master of it. When I went back and looked, it was Jack Ingram. He asked me, he's like, you don't know Don Will? I'm like, well, I know some of it. He's like, you didn't grow up listening to that? I'm like, no. He's like, what's wrong with you?
Another thing I wanted to touch on, and you've mentioned, the Boston music scene and then coming to Nashville. What do you feel like has been, because I've known very few people, I feel like as time goes on, I've known more, but that are able to not live in Nashville and have any sort of commercial success. And you have done that so well. And I'd love to hear what you feel like is the positive of your main house being outside of Nashville. Mm-hmm. And, and you get the question.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I did, so when I got my publishing deal, my son David, who's 16, was just born. He was probably not even a year old. And he's the youngest of 5. So in those early years, there was always like someone in high school, someone like the kids all in different schools. And I just never could, the idea of moving to Nashville was never going to work for or be convenient for anybody except for me. And I sort of, at that point I was just so, I still am so blessed that I get to do what I love every day, that I couldn't imagine making my family suffer for my art. You know what I mean? And if there was a way to do things and balance things out, I was never going to pull everybody out, like take the kids away from their friends and their teachers. And my family lives all right down the street, and Jean's family lives all right down the street. So it never really was comfortable to me to even like think about what that would look like. Other than people asking me the question early on, are you going to move? Are you going to move? It was like, no, I can't, I can't. This is me. This is my love. And right now, it's not something that would help anybody else except for myself. So when I got more and more involved in the Nashville community. And I just, fly there all the time. I go twice a month, sometimes 3 times a month, in and out. It's an easy flight, all that. I realized that it was actually good for me to not be there every day, because I'm not an everyday writer. And I think if I lived there every day and got into the swing of Monday through Friday writing, like a lot of my friends do, or even early on when you're a new writer, writing 2-a-days and things like that, and then at night cutting a demo, and just I think I would get burnt out. And I never got burnt out, because I was here and I was only there in the beginning. I was only there 2 days a month. And so it was like I would write as much as I could in those 2 days, but then I'd go home and just write alone. But I think that was good for me. I think I never got burnt out. I still, and I know you feel this way too, but I still love that town with all my heart. I still love getting off the plane and knowing that today in Nashville, Tennessee, so many great songs are going to be written by so many of my friends or people that I haven't met yet. But it's a song city. It's just it's where songs are made. And I just love that about it. And I don't mind the traffic, because I live in Boston. and I did, I think there's still so much, I find so much innocence in the process still, because I never moved there. And I know that people like yourself that do live there still feel that way, but it's just magical to me still.
Well, I think it's a huge bonus for you. I really,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways, I envy it, because it does stay magical, and not that it's not magical for me. And I've been out in LA for a while with everything going on, it makes me appreciate
Yeah.
what Nashville has more than maybe I ever have, because you're just in it every day and you take it for granted. But I always think you're so special, because you've never been put into the machine.
Yeah.
There I think of one of my favorite lines in a song we wrote is hairnet job. I would never have that line. And I think that is very you and where you live all the time, or most of the time. And I think that that's so special. And it always, there, in any of your songs, there's always something that I think, oh, wow, that would not get said by somebody, even in the South.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's really awesome.
Well, I mean, I know that I've been so lucky now that I know the way sort of it works. And, I have 2 kids that want to be songwriters, and they've moved to Nashville. I mean, I've even told my own children, you have to live there if you want to do this. If you want to get a publishing deal and write songs every day, you have to move there. So I know that what happened to me was just a blessing, and was really because of Mary, my music made it down there, and all that. And I know that's a blessing, but and there's been many times over the years that I've gone out of balance with things, or been touring too much, or, it's sometimes the travel does get to all of us, and we miss our people. But my goal was always, my people are first. And if I could never imagine making someone else suffer because I love writing songs. It's just it was never going to be in the cards for me. And I think that has made me never get sort of bitter towards the process, because I'm always still surprised that I get to do it.
That's what makes it really special. The whole thing. Clearly, great mom, great songwriter, great artist.
Well,
Which
my kids might not agree.
So, is there a favorite song? Do you have of every song you've written? Is there a favorite song?
Oh, that's so hard. That's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah. And you don't have to say one. You can say a couple. If you want to play one, you can, or play a piece of it, or just talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're in record mode now, and one of my greatest benefits, or what blessings from music, other than being able to do it, is all of the adult friendships that I have been able to have, and people like yourself that I would have never met. And getting in a writing room, we immediately, even the first time we write, it's we tell each other our life stories. We get to know each other like on a really intimate level just by writing songs so much together. And I've had so many great friendships develop through writing like us, you know, and Barry Dean and like people that I consider family, like I love, you know. And so I get to write with Liz Rose and Hillary Lindsay probably the most. And I have a record coming out, and there's 3 songs on there that we wrote together, and I'm just happy that I get to put them out and in my own little spot in the world and share them with, you know, my fans and people that listen to Americana music and our sort of music. But I can sing you a little bit of my When You're My Age. Is that all right?
Yes, and this is on your new album, The Balladeer, which you guys need to pre-order it right now if you haven't. And then after you play this, you just led me into a great question that I didn't even have written down. So I'd love
Okay.
Yes.
Should we do question first or song first?
Do the song first.
Okay. And talking about co-writing, this song I did try just real quickly. I did try to write it at home by myself for the longest time. And I got the title, it's called When You're My Age. And I got the title from David Letterman because he did an interview with Howard Stern and they were talking about the world today. And, you know, this was a couple of years ago even. And he said to Howard Stern, my son's 14. What's the world going to look like when he's my age? Mm. And I just loved that question, and it scared me, and it, you know, just like made me think a million things in my heart. And so I had the verses, but I had 2 of the 3 verses, and I couldn't figure out how to hook it, or I just thought When You're My Age was like a way to get into the song, but I didn't see it as a hook or like a way back or anything. And I brought it to Liz and Hillary, and we ended up writing it together. Liz just started singing the chorus, and then Hillary found the hook, and we all cried. And we're all at different ages with our kids and in our lives. And I really think that the 3 of us were supposed to write, like God wouldn't let me write it by myself. Like I was supposed to write it with Liz and Hillary. And I'll just play it for you. When you're my age, I hope the world is kinder than it seems to be right now. And I hope the front page isn't just a reminder of how we keep letting each other down. When I was your age, things didn't seem to be this hard. Riding bikes out on the street, playing tag in the backyard. You'll outgrow your shoes, you'll outgrow your bed, you'll outgrow this house. Just don't forget when you're all grown up that you don't feel that way. You're still gonna be my baby, even when you're my age. When you're my age, still be full of questions that I wish I had the answers to right now. Those dark times might make you second guess it, but I bet love will still be making the world go round. When I was your age, didn't worry like I think you do. Back then innocence was something we could hold on to. You'll outgrow your shoes, you'll outgrow your bed, you'll outgrow this house. Just don't forget when you're all grown up that you don't feel that way. You're still gonna be my baby, could teach them the Lord's Prayer before they go to bed at night, like my daddy did for me and his mother before him. Well, something about it just keeps you right. And I hope you don't work too much overtime, so you can be right there beside them when they close their little eyes. 'Cause they'll outgrow their shoes, they'll outgrow their beds, they'll outgrow that house, and you can't stop it. Life will line your face, time will turn the page, they're still gonna be your babies, just like you're still gonna be my baby. Even when you're mine. Even when you're mine.
Beautiful, beautiful. So timely for everything in the world. So what I was going to ask is how you and Liz and Hillary are known as the Love Junkies.
Right.
How did that connection happen?
That happened because when I was coming to town at that time, I always stay at Liz's house. And I would just sleep over there and for 3 days at a time. So my publisher was Whitney Williams at the time. She was trying to get me with Hillary and Liz, and then the three publishers, everyone had a different publisher. They decided, well, if Laurie's here for 3 days, why don't we just put them together for 3 days? And the first song we wrote together, we had written, like Hillary and I had written over the years, Liz and Hillary had written over the years. They had a Taylor Swift song that it may have been Fearless, I forget which one, but and they put us together for 3 days. The first song we wrote together was Sober, which Little Big Town cut. And in that song, in writing that song, like we knew like right away that we loved, like we should do this all the time. This is fun. And it got to the point before Hillary had her daughter that she would sleep over all the time. Like we would just have like a big old camp out, and we'd write from like 8 in the morning until like somebody fell asleep. Like we would just go nuts writing songs. And we still do. We still do like every other month we do it. And now it's more like girl talk, and well, now it's on Zoom, but last time we get it, it's just like a big sleepover, like slumber party with your girlfriends and songwriting in between.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because I remember, there were the Peach Pickers, which was Dallas Davidson, Red Akins, and Ben Hayslip, and you always hear about the Peach Pickers. And then I remember, Lori and Liz and Hillary, they're calling themselves the Love Junkies, which I thought was just amazing.
Well, you reminded me, because I think that it got brought up because we were like, we should have a name. The Peach Pickers have a name, but I couldn't remember what the name was. But that was where it started, and we were trying to find a rhyme. And it was junkie came up somehow. I literally think I was in the bathroom when we came up with the name. And it was a joke, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you what, when you write so many songs with the same 3 people, it's much easier to write at the top of the page, Love Junkies, and all 3 of our names. So.
Good. Well, I have kept you a long time. I want to ask you one more question. I haven't asked any other guest this, but I thought you would be a fun person to ask this. Is there a song, well, I'm sure there has to be, we all have it, but in the last 10 or 15 years that you didn't write, that you heard and thought, man, I'd given a finger to have written that. Or, I wish I'd written that.
I mean, so many, right? Honestly, I don't know how old this song is, but oh my God, who wrote the song? I'm totally blank, but we were just talking about Trisha, but that song, the song Remembers When, it's probably maybe older than 15 years. I don't know.
Crestwood. It is, but that's
okay. I think probably any song he's written, probably. Did he also write The Suit?
Yes, I love that song.
I mean,
I mean, he has a song called April Fool that I love. I mean,
I
he's
don't know
a
that song.
great
Uh,
example of, yeah, you look at that title and you think it's going to be funny and it's not.
Oh, and then I did a little tour. I did a little tour with her where I opened for her years ago, Trisha, and which is how I know that she is, first, like we all do, that she is one of the best voices ever created, but and the sweetest person. But she would sing that song every night, and it just, I mean, I think pretty much anything he does. There's also that song, The Blade. You know that song?
Monroe,
Which I think is Alan Shambling, right? And
and I think it's Jamie Floyd
Jamie Floyd.
and oh my gosh, Mark Beeson.
Okay, I get, like, when you hear a turn like that, and I asked somebody, I don't remember who I asked. I might have asked Jamie, like, where did that come from? And I thought she told me that they found it in the room, like it wasn't a pre-thought thing. And when you hear those stories of somebody finding magic in the room, um, those are always like, those kind of give us all a little pump in our step, like, oh, maybe we'll like,
I mean, it makes you think, okay, even when you don't feel like you have anything, I'm going to show up. You never know what might just get said.
Yeah, which is totally true, and we've all seen it happen. But I mean, there's just so many. We're so lucky that we know enough to pay attention to songs, because there's so many, as do all your fans. But it's like there's so many. Just, I mean, we could probably go. What about you? What song would you say?
Well, I mean, I can tell you one, and I was there when it was written. Is Merry-Go-Round.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was on a writing retreat. It was myself, Shane McAnally, Josh Osborne, Luke Laird, and Casey Musgraves. And we were there to write for Casey. And so we all drew names out of a hat for who we would be with. And Luke and I were upstairs. I always joke, we were writing a song called I Drink to Get Drunk. And they were downstairs writing Merry-Go-Round. So that's one of them. Honestly, and I'm not just saying this because you're on here, Girl Crush was one of them for me. Like, there's something about that song to me that is so timeless.
And that was in the room. I mean, I said the title. We discussed it, Zero and Hillary just started singing the song. Like, it was those moments, those rare moments where she sang the first 4 lines of the song right after I said the title, and then she looked at me, she said, "You mean like that?" And I looked at Liz, and Liz took her book out, like it, like when you see, or like I've heard Shane talk about Casey Musgraves walking in with Space Cowboy, and and saying, I thought of, but it would turn like this. And I don't know, words are so fun, and songs are so fun when you hear the stories. Like, I Can't Make You Love Me, which is probably the best song ever written. If you could only pick one, it might be that one for me. And you hear that, that they had to work for it. They had to, go back and pick it apart and try different tempos or whatever they did. Like,
I think they wrote it as kind of a bluegrass song.
that's what I heard too.
And what's great about that song is I was doing something with Mike Reed, and Mike Reed and Alan Shamlin wrote that song, for those of you that don't know. And Mike Reed is just, they're both amazing all the way around guys.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike and we were doing KT Oslin's Hall of Fame induction, so we were working together on that. And so I felt comfortable enough to ask him, like, is that song about anybody for you? And he put his hand over his heart and said, yeah. And he said the girl's name, and
Oh, wow.
somebody from high school. And he was an adult and married and,
Yeah.
loving his wife and still with her and stuff. But he was able to draw on that, the way that he felt, and put that in that song.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's just amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. It's whenever somebody finds a way to turn a phrase, like, that you haven't heard it, those tricky things are cool. But also when somebody can just say, I can't make you love me if you don't. And it just gets in your, I mean, those are just, those words oh, just words that somebody could say in a conversation, but with that melody and with that, you know, tone that you always hear. Oh, it's just,
Beautiful.
it's gorgeous.
Well, I've kept you a long time, and I really appreciate you joining me. And thank you for your music and your heart and what you do. And everybody watching this, go out and pre-order the Balladeer. You know, we've all heard the "When You're My Age," which, you know, if you, as my mom would say, would bring a tear to a glass eye. So there's only more goodness on this record. So definitely go get it. Thank you so much, Lori. And
Thank you, Brandy. I love you. Thanks for doing this. It's been so good to hang out with you during all this time to time.
all right, we'll see you guys later.